Day 202 of the Ukrainian war map, also known as Russia's devastating invasion of Ukraine. Chelsea here, and today is another quick update as I take a simplified and down-to-earth approach to some of the most important happenings on the ground in Ukraine today. And as always, we start off with having a look at the Russian losses, just to take a bit of a peek and get an idea of the wearing thin of the exhaustion of those Russian forces there. And starting off with personnel losses, we are currently sitting on, got to switch it to the next day, 53,300 military personnel losses on the Russian side. So that's an additional 350 or so since the previous day. Then we move across to some of the hardware losses. So armored combat vehicles, an additional whopping 22 as of the last 24-hour reporting period. Then we have an additional 7 tanks, so always quite a big deal, even just a few tanks, 10 artillery losses, and an additional aircraft as well. Now we'll start off on the map on the outskirts of Ukraine itself, so in Belgorod, where the governor of Belgorod, the region or the oblast, urged Russian citizens on the border with the Kharkiv oblast to evacuate away from the border. So this is on the back of the recent counteroffensive on the Ukrainian side, taking back the Kharkiv oblast, so reclaiming it. And now there's a bit of shelling on the border area amongst the two armies, the Russian and the Ukrainian armies. And there's more than just a few liberation photos. So here in Ternova, the Ukraine military got just a photo of those guys there. Certainly a close border town as well. And we've also got the Ukrainian military arriving at Vovchansk, really. So this is the territorial defense forces, again, extremely close to the border there. And what would a recapturing of an oblast be without the very much expected footage of flag burning and pulling down of propaganda signage? This one, of course, in Kharkiv also. Now, there's been lots of donations from the Russian army to the Ukrainian side with tanks, infantry fighting vehicles, certainly a lot of vehicles, but don't forget the ammo as well. Like in this photo of a stockpile of munitions Russian troops left behind when they fled. Now here's something interesting. So remember Izium, which was reclaimed by the Ukrainian forces in the last couple of days or so. Now, in the last day or so, interestingly, Russian units attempted to entrench in new positions around here after they were pushed away from Izium. However, they didn't realize they were already outflanked. That is to say, surrounded by Ukrainian forces behind them. This astounds me because it appears there's really terrible communication amongst the Russian armed forces. Literally countless examples of bad communication amongst the Russian armed forces now. It's pretty sad, really. Now, if you like numbers, the counteroffensive in Kharkiv, or the Kharkiv Oblast region, resulted in destroying about $700 million worth of Russian equipment. Russian losses included 86 tanks, 158 armored fighting vehicles, 106 artillery systems, 159 vehicles, and 46 units of other equipment. So that's quite a big deal. Then we move across to the Donbass, where Ukrainian troops continue their advance eastward. So Ukrainian troops are in Sviatohorsk. Now this photo here, and it's at this location there, you can see the cave monastery in the background. Now this seems quite far away from the real Donbass action, But it is quite important as it means the Ukrainian armed forces have crossed the Seversky Donets River, which is of strategic importance. So you can see it all go along this line here, and they're on the north, sort of the northeast side of the river. This is something that Russia has had trouble doing, getting to the south side of the river. So it appears that Russia's army has had major difficulties with land or natural obstacles. And we'll zoom out for a bit of context again, then zoom back in here where the Ukrainian forces took Bilohorivka on the sort of the northeast corner here of the really where the Donbass is intensifying in its shelling. So although this map doesn't show it, because the map is always going to be a little bit out of date, we do have the Ukrainian forces here since a day or two ago now. And they have since staged attacks from here as well. And just above it, the Russian army leaves a key town of Kreminna right there. So the city is completely empty, or it's said to be completely empty, and the Ukrainian flag raised by local partisans, and that flies high. Now, I apologize, I couldn't find any footage, so this is the next closest footage that I could find. And then we've also got reports of a missile strike in Kadivka. Now, that is in Luhansk. Let's see, so right here. Reminds me of Horlivka, a little bit further down southwest of it. Now, this potentially is a supply line or an ammo dump, but we don't know for sure yet at this point. And again, just like the last few days or even the last few months, there's been much shelling from the Russian side to the Ukrainian side here, where Russia continuously attempts to take cities like Bakhmut, Sloviansk, even New York over here, Avdiivka or Divka as well. So yeah, there's a lot of repelled attacks here, and this is what all these arrows really are. Russians trying to push forward. They have lost ground in so many locations, even this massive dip here in recent weeks, but they just have been repelled on every attempt. And speaking of attempts, we move down to the village of Vulida. So there was heavy shelling here as well for the last 2 days. Russia would really like to take this location and close the gap, but they're finding it very difficult to do so still as well. Now again, just because it's really close, we'll move outside of Ukraine as well to Rostov. So around this region here. Haven't got the best photo, but there was a big explosion in this region here. The target may have been an airfield. So far it looks like an airbase with radar installations, which would make a lot of sense. Cruise missiles have actually also been fired from this approximate location, so in Russia to Ukraine in the last few days to weeks. So obviously this location was of some strategic importance from the Ukrainian side, but it's quite far inland. So looking at that distance, just pulling out the ruler, 175 kilometers, that would be roughly 105 or 110 miles. So this really is a one-way trip for a Ukrainian drone, perhaps. Now we move across to the south side, the Kherson Oblast, where Ukraine's southern counteroffensive continues to have significant impact on Russian military capabilities. In fact, I might start over here because the Institute for the Study of War, so the ISW, said satellite imagery for known Russian positions, particularly in this location here of Kaisalivka, 15 kilometers northwest of Kherson city, or about 10 miles, shows just 4 Russian vehicles left. So this is really cool to have this operational capability, some really up-to-date satellite footage or photographs showing how much is in any given region, which means we can't see it yet. It's probably happening as I speak, but the Ukrainian forces might be pushing through to this region here as they continue to use the highway all down the way into the Kherson city, for instance, there. So it's good to see that there's not much forces there. It's just left quite empty. I mean, 4 vehicles, 4 Russian military vehicles. Yeah, they couldn't hold a defensive stance here against the Ukrainians, surely. And no surprise here, but the Ukrainian forces have targeted Kherson's Antonivsky Bridge once again, so that's this one right here. So the Ukrainian forces are not allowing Russians to move north or south of the north bank of the Dnipro River here. It is said that we've got quite in the thousands or tens of thousands of Russians somewhat trapped here. They don't have great, if any, supply lines. They're just low on all sorts of things, and yeah, I do like to keep an eye on this area in the next few days to few weeks to see what happens. And on that topic already, really, the Southern Command, the Ukraine Southern Command, has said that Russia lost over 1,800 troops in this region in the last 2 weeks. So it also said Ukraine destroyed 500 armored vehicles and 122 tanks. So they've done quite a bit here on this side in the last few days to weeks, certainly. And speaking of interesting things in Kherson, there are some local reports of Russian troops surrendering en masse on the Kherson front. Now, I'm going to take this with a grain of salt for now. I do want more proof before I say it's really true. But other reports say Russian soldiers are trying to negotiate laying down their arms. And if this is all true, this would be because the southern Russian forces absolutely would have heard about what happened in the north with the Kharkiv Oblast counteroffensive there, which would really tend to motivate Russian soldiers to attempt to safely surrender. And the Russians know exactly what to do now to surrender to the Ukrainian forces, because they are being provided or distributed these cards with a very nice message. It says, "Your ticket to a peaceful life. Show this card to a Ukrainian soldier. It will save your life and help you get back home." And on the back of it, there's a Telegram chat and phone number they can contact to receive detailed support. So isn't that nice? And we move to some news now where this is somewhat breaking within the last day or so. So deputies in 18 districts of Moscow and St. Petersburg, so in Russia, have signed a statement demanding that Putin resign. And they say President Putin's actions are detrimental to the future of Russia and its citizens. They also go on to say that Putin did okay with Russia in his first 2 terms, but in his last 2 terms, he's just not been really pro-citizenry of the Russian Federation, and things have gone backwards. He started wars that shouldn't have, all sorts of things there. And in other news, there has been yet another mysterious death. So Ivan Pechorin, manager of the Far Eastern Arctic Development Corporation, has died under mysterious circumstances. According to official police reports, Pechorin fell overboard near Russky Island. And add to that, the company's previous CEO died in February of this year. And I've mentioned that on a previous video as well. So very, very fishy. No pun intended. So Pechorin had campaigned for Russians to have greater access to foreign travel and lobbied for international airfares to be reduced or even subsidized. He was therefore critical of the war in Ukraine and its impacts on Russian travel and overall public image as well. Now, probably a slightly funny thing, I'd have to say, is local police in the region where he fell overboard reported that as soon as he fell overboard, a large-scale search and rescue operation was launched. However, locals and shipping crews in the area have denied this, saying that no one had mentioned anything about a missing person. And in other news, the Ukrainian General Staff of the Armed Forces said on September the 13th that Russia's military command has suspended sending new units to Ukraine and that a large number of volunteers are also refusing to fight in Russia's army. So perhaps word is getting around that if you enlist as a soldier in the special military operation, you might just never come back. Now, here's a little bit of frustrating, annoying, and sad news. So, 2 Ukrainian women from Izium were allegedly physically abused by a Russian man after playing Ukrainian music on their phones in France, of all places, according to the Nice Matin news outlet. The Ukrainian embassy in France condemned the attack. Now, that is just so senseless. 95% of the world stands with Ukraine, so what are all the expat Russians going to do? Just go around abusing everybody? It's just madness, really. And in other news, the Estonian foreign minister advised that they will not rest until Ukraine has won this war. The Estonian foreign minister, Urmas Rensulu, very hard to pronounce, wrote that upon the latest successful Ukrainian counteroffensive, his country's aid and Ukrainian desire for freedom is literally booming, but there is still more we can do. So, in other words, them's fighting words from a Baltic state that actually borders with Russia right there. So very ballsy, very great to stand up in solidarity against Russia's illegal invasion of Ukraine. And now just to round it all off with a bit of a funny, so a couple of funnies here, let's say. So someone left a washing machine outside the Russian embassy in Helsinki, so that's in Finland, with a note telling Putin to stop stealing them from Ukrainian grandmothers. So there's been a lot of news, a lot of proof, or a lot of information and reports going around about Russians looting when they're in Ukraine. So they're stealing all sorts of things. Now, ideally, you might want to steal something that's small and valuable so you can carry it around. But there's been a lot of reports, surprisingly more than even one, of Russian soldiers stealing dryers and washing machines from Ukrainians and taking them back to Russia. Like, these are such big things. Like, they've obviously got the truck space. It's just so weird that they're doing this. Which brings us to another washing machine joke. So indicative Ukrainian losses. So losses on the Ukrainian side. So a whole bunch of stuff, but what's topping the list there obviously is the washing machine as well. And this last thing I really want to squeeze in could be considered funny. So it's just a bit of an infographic of, so it says here, as you can see, Ukraine recaptured 3,400 square miles in 1 week. So on the left hand, we can see those 3,400 square miles. Most of these gains, of course, in the Kharkiv Oblast. You'll see a few little blue dots down the south near Kherson as well. And they're saying that this has happened in 1 week, a recapturing, where as opposed to the last 5 months for Russia captured only 2,000 square miles in 20 times longer the period of time. So yeah, just a bit of a funny I find there as well. So that's about it, guys. Thanks for watching. Please leave a comment, subscribe, hit that like button, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Try to ignore the trolls. They are still around. They're not around as much because they're, I guess you could say, regrouping to change their strategy on what they say now. There are actual propaganda offices in Russia designed to tell these guys what to do. Sometimes they get paid. In fact, I believe most of them do. I don't know how that pay structure works, but it's, yeah, I'll leave that as it is for now. So yeah, thanks again for watching, guys, and I do hope to see all of you guys there in the next one. Cheers.